I really don't understand how this old man can still fix vehicles in such a place and even call it a profession. On a bustling street in Saigon, a poor old mechanic is looked down upon, but his true identity is about to make all those who despise him bow their heads in regret. In a small corner of the sidewalk under a faded, torn tarpaulin, sits Mr. Min, a man with calloused hands quietly making a living amidst the hurried pace of life. Luxury motorbikes zoom past, and the eyes of passersby glance at him briefly, either with pity or cold indifference. They don't know that this seemingly ordinary old man holds a secret that can challenge all prejudices. That sidewalk corner, where Mr. Min has sat for nearly 10 years, is everything he owns. An old wooden stool, a rusty toolbox, and a worn-out bicycle by his side are his steadfast companions in his simple life. His tiny rented home at the end of a narrow alley, where he returns after each day of work, consists of 4 bare walls and a few old belongings. He lives alone. His wife passed away long ago, and his son works far away. His quiet but resilient life stands in stark contrast to the glitz of Saigon streets. Mr. Min has never felt inferior or complained about his circumstances. To him, each day of work is a joy and a testament to his self-worth. Every morning, he takes his place at his familiar sidewalk corner, greeting customers with dedication and a gentle smile. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss tomorrow's inspiring story. Each morning, Mr. Min begins his workday as the street sees only a sparse few passers-by. His calloused hands deftly prepare his tools, each old yet neatly arranged. The faded tarpaulin is stretched tighter to provide shade, and his eyes light up with focus as he inspects every tiny screw. To him, this job is not just a means of survival, but a reminder of the value of honest labor. Mr. Min's customers are mainly workers like himself, bricklayers, motorbike taxi drivers, or street vendors. They come to him for repairs on old motorbikes, vehicles that have endured countless rainy and sunny days. Mr. Min always welcomes them with dedication and a gentle smile. To him, each repaired motorbike is a small joy, as it not only helps others continue their work, but also gives him a sense of pride. Sometimes, Mr. Min refuses to take money from struggling customers. "Pay me when you can. I'll fix it for now," he often says. Yet, these acts of kindness sometimes make passers-by regard him coldly, seeing him as just a poor old man with a naive way of living. He pays no attention and continues his work as usual. Despite the hardships, this simple life brings him peace. He has never demanded more, for to him, each day of labor is a day he feels alive and meaningful. That morning, as the sun rose and the street grew busier with the sound of vehicles and hurried footsteps, Mr. Min quietly adjusted a bike wheel for a regular customer under his old tarpaulin. Suddenly, a loud noise shattered the calm atmosphere. A shiny, large motorbike screeched to a halt in front of Mr. Min's modest stall. A man, around 40 years old, dressed in a designer shirt and wearing an expensive watch, stepped off the bike. His face showed irritation as he glanced at his flat tire. "My bike has a flat. Fix it quickly," he barked, his tone sharp and commanding. Mr. Min calmly looked up and responded with a kind smile. "Let me take a look for you, sir." As Mr. Min began gathering his tools, the man, named Hung, stood with his arms crossed, scanning the small stall with a look of disdain. "This shabby place can fix it? Or will my bike end up worse after you touch it?" he sneered, his loud words drawing the attention of passers-by. A street vendor nearby shook her head slightly, her expression showing discomfort. Mr. Min, however, remained composed and silent, meticulously inspecting the bike. But Hung's impatience grew. "Can't you hurry up? Or are you too old and slow? If you can't fix it, just tell me so I can take it somewhere else." The tension in the air thickened as onlookers began to gather. Whispering and murmuring could be heard as people watched the scene unfold. Some looked at Mr. Min with sympathy, while others simply observed in silence. Under the scorching sun, Mr. Min maintained his calm demeanor, his hands skillfully working despite Hung's harsh words. This old man is so poor. I doubt he's ever fixed anything properly in his life, Hung continued with a voice dripping with contempt. Imagine, someone who can't even afford a decent motorbike. How could he possibly have the skills to do this job? Hung's words cut through the air like a blade, leaving a momentary silence. Some onlookers showed visible discomfort, but no one spoke up. The tension escalated when Hung pointed at Mr. Min's stall. Look at this place. Everything is old and filthy. I don't understand how anyone would trust this man with their vehicle. A female street vendor nearby shot a glare at Hung, her eyes filled with anger. But Mr. Min, as always, remained quiet, continuing his work with his usual calm. This attitude only fueled Hung's anger. Who do you think you are to make me wait? Fix it faster, or I'll take my bike elsewhere. The crowd grew larger, whispers turning into louder discussions. Some criticized Hung for his behavior, while others silently observed. Mr. Min stayed silent, his hands never pausing as he worked through Hung's insults. Suddenly, a nearby bread vendor, Mrs. Han, stepped forward. Young man, every job deserves respect. Being wealthy and driving a nice bike doesn't give you the right to look down on others, she said firmly but respectfully. Some onlookers nodded in agreement. Hung smirked at her, his face full of disdain. You're quite the philosopher, aren't you? I only care about getting my bike fixed on time. Save your moral lessons for someone who wants to hear them. A young man in the crowd, unable to hold back any longer, stepped forward. You shouldn't insult others like that. You may be rich, but that doesn't mean you can belittle anyone. Mr. Min is an honest and respectable man. No one deserves to be treated like this. Hung turned to him with a mocking smile. Oh, you're defending him? So you're saying I'm wrong? Look at him, a poor old man sitting on the sidewalk. No fancy house, no assets. Does someone like that deserve respect? Hung's words only heightened the tension as the crowd grew larger and the atmosphere more charged. Through it all, Mr. Min remained calm. He looked up at Hung, his voice steady yet powerful. I don't need anyone to respect me. I make an honest living fixing bikes to support myself. I've done nothing wrong. Fixing bikes may be a humble job, but it's honest work. Nam looked at Mr. Hung with resolute eyes. Uncle Min lives for himself and true values. Ask yourself, can what you have buy you genuine respect from others? Nam's words made Mr. Hung pause for a moment, but instead of reflecting, he responded sharply, You're saying all this just to defend an old, poor man sitting by the roadside? Enough. I don't have time to argue. Just fix the car. The tension between Nam and Mr. Hung caught the attention of bystanders. Some began to voice their support for Mr. Min, while others looked at Mr. Hung with disapproval. Yet, Mr. Min calmly continued his work, ignoring the heated exchange. His rough hands worked meticulously, ensuring the car was repaired flawlessly. The crowd seemed divided, some were indignant with Mr. Hung, while others merely observed silently. Regardless of their opinions, all eyes were on Mr. Min, the unassuming man who was challenging everyone to reconsider the true values of life. When Mr. Min finished repairing the car, he stood up, dusted off his hands, and carefully checked his work one last time. The car is ready. Please check if there's anything else that needs adjustment, he said in a steady voice. Mr. Hung didn't respond immediately. He cast a doubtful glance at the car before opening the trunk to retrieve his wallet. Meanwhile, Mr. Min tidied up his tools. As he worked, a small, old military badge fell from his pocket. The faded metal glinted under the sunlight. Mr. Min bent down, picked it up, and gently wiped it clean as if out of habit. His expression softened as he looked at it. Suddenly, an older man in the crowd, broad-shouldered with silver hair, gasped sharply and stepped forward. Wait a minute, that badge. His voice trembled. All eyes in the crowd turned toward Mr. Min and the badge. The older man stared at it intently, then looked directly at Mr. Min with a mixture of astonishment and reverence. Are you Colonel Min Nguyen? His words struck like lightning, silencing the crowd. Everyone's gaze fixed on Mr. Min, their faces filled with disbelief. Mr. Min smiled faintly, placing the badge back in his pocket. Yes, I was Colonel Min. But now, I'm just an ordinary man fixing cars. His voice was calm, devoid of pride or regret, just a simple acknowledgement of the truth. The crowd began to murmur. The older man's voice trembled with emotion as he continued. I recognized you the moment I saw that badge. You commanded the battle in the central region and saved our entire squad. You're a hero. His words hung in the air, leaving the crowd stunned. Some covered their mouths in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. A woman whispered, "He was a colonel?" That's incredible. Even Mr. Hung, who had stood arrogantly moments ago, was now visibly shaken. He stared at Mr. Min, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. A colonel? How can that be? He stammered. Nam, the young man, looked at Mr. Min with newfound respect. So, you were a hero, yet you chose such a humble life. That's truly admirable. For a moment, the atmosphere was frozen in awe. Before them stood Colonel Min Nguyen, once a celebrated war hero, now leading a modest life as a mechanic. The older man stepped closer, his voice brimming with reverence. Back then, you were the fearless leader who guided us through enemy lines and saved us from certain death. If it weren't for you, I and many others wouldn't be standing here today. Mr. Min smiled gently, his demeanor unchanged. It was my duty at the time. Now, this life is all I desire. The older man's voice grew thick with emotion as he continued. I remember how you never backed down, even in the face of danger. You led us through the toughest battles, yet you never sought fame or fortune. His words seemed to ignite something in the crowd, bringing to light the extraordinary past of the humble man before them. Whispers of admiration rippled through the onlookers. It's hard to believe a former hero lives so simply, someone murmured. Nam looked at Mr. Min, his heart filled with admiration. I had no idea you sacrificed so much for our country. Yet, you live so quietly now, without boasting about your past. Mr. Min shook his head, smiling gently. The past is the past. My present life is what matters. Living simply doesn't mean I've lost my values. I just want to live peacefully without depending on anyone. Mr. Min's words touched the hearts of everyone in the crowd. Some bowed their heads, not out of obligation but out of genuine respect. A few were moved to tears. Mr. Hung, who had been so arrogant and dismissive earlier, now stood frozen. His eyes darted between the badge and Mr. Min, his face betraying his turmoil. Finally, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. I don't know what to say. I was wrong. Please forgive me, he stammered, his voice trembling. The crowd fell silent, watching the moment unfold with mixed emotions. Mr. Min placed a reassuring hand on Mr. Hung's shoulder. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is learning from them. Don't dwell on it, just live a good life. His words weren't just for Mr. Hung, but felt like a message to everyone present. The tension in the air dissolved, replaced by understanding and calm. A few people approached Mr. Min, bowing slightly in gratitude, not just for his past sacrifices, but for the lesson he had imparted that day. Even Mr. Hung, who had been so proud moments ago, now stood with his hands clenched, his face reflecting deep regret. Finally, after a moment of hesitation, Mr. Hung bowed deeply. Mr. Min, I truly apologize for my words and actions earlier. I was wrong, terribly wrong. I didn't know about your past, but regardless, I had no right to insult a good man like you. His apology wasn't just an expression of regret, it was a moment of awakening. Mr. Min's kind eyes met Mr. Hung's. I don't blame you. Everyone stumbles at times. What's important is what we learn from our mistakes. Mr. Hung looked up, his expression filled with gratitude and newfound humility. The crowd, once divided, now shared a common sense of admiration for the quiet hero who had taught them all a profound lesson about humility and the true meaning of value. Moved by the moment, he said with sincerity, "You are truly noble. I feel unworthy of your forgiveness." Nam, standing nearby, spoke slowly. Uncle Min has not only taught us the value of kindness, but also how to confront our mistakes. Uncle Hung, Apologizing is a big step, but what matters most is how you live your life from today onwards. Nam's words rang with conviction, and the crowd around nodded in agreement. Hung quietly nodded, his voice filled with determination. I will change. I won't let arrogance blind me again. Thank you, Uncle Min, for giving me the chance to realize this. Min gave a gentle smile, placing a hand on Hung's shoulder. Nobody is perfect. Life is a journey of learning and growing. I hope you remember that. The surrounding crowd remained silent, seemingly reflecting on the lesson they had witnessed. A woman whispered, "It's rare to meet someone so humble yet so noble as Uncle Min." After Hung's apology, the atmosphere shifted to a calm stillness, with everyone lost in thought. The admiring gazes turned toward Min, the modest man who had left such a profound impression on everyone. Nam, the young man, looked at Min with deep emotion. His voice choked as he said, "Uncle Min, I think I've learned something very important today, that we should never judge people by their appearances or what they possess. True value lies in a person's character and how they live their life." His words struck a chord with the crowd. A middle-aged woman softly said, "Uncle Min doesn't just live kindly, he lives true to his values. We are fortunate to witness such a person." Min smiled faintly, his voice calm yet profound. Everyone's life is their own story. Some choose to live flamboyantly, others choose simplicity. But what matters most is living in a way that brings peace to your own heart. His words swept over the crowd like a refreshing breeze, leaving them introspective. Hung bowed once more, speaking with genuine humility. "Thank you for helping me see my mistakes. I will never forget this lesson, and I'll live differently from now on." The elderly man who had recognized Min nodded in agreement. "We've all made mistakes. But it's because of people like Uncle Min that we learn how to be better." Nam turned to Hung, his eyes no longer filled with anger, but with hope. "I believe that if you change, you'll earn true respect from others, not through money or power, but by how you treat the people around you." The crowd gradually dispersed, but the lessons and values that Min imparted lingered in their hearts. A young man in the crowd quietly said to his friend, "Sometimes what we see is just the surface. Behind that lies an entire story we couldn't have imagined." As the crowd thinned out, the street returned to its usual tranquility. Min carefully packed up his old tools, arranging them neatly under a faded tarp. He sat back down on his worn wooden chair, watching the passers-by with his usual calm demeanor. Soon, another customer arrived, a street vendor with a broken cart. Min greeted him with a smile and began working swiftly. The steadiness and patience in his movements were unchanged, as if the emotional mourning had not occurred. Nam, still standing nearby, silently observed. He stepped closer and bowed slightly. "Uncle Min, from now on, I'll visit you often. I want to learn from you how to live kindly and simply." Min just smiled and nodded gently. The flow of people continued, and the afternoon sun cast its golden light over the small corner of the street. There, Min remained himself, a simple mechanic whose values left a lasting impact on everyone he met. As the day went on, those passing by looked at him differently, not with indifference or scorn, but with respect and understanding. At that little corner, Min needed neither fame nor praise. For him, living kindly and fulfilling his responsibilities was enough to find peace. His life stood as proof that a person's worth isn't in flashy appearances, but in how they choose to live and treat others. Nam watched Min, his eyes bright with hope, thinking to himself, a simple man who teaches such profound lessons. This shows that sometimes the quietest people are the greatest. If you found this story inspiring and wish to hear more meaningful lessons, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us for more thought-provoking tales.